Now, I just wanted to cover those articles, tell folks that it's all documented there for them at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. George Humphrey, take us out to break in the next 10 minutes. Break down the real economics of this. And again, I pointed this out last week. I remember, when did you put out your first audio book off your first book, Common Sense?
1998.
1998, I remember driving to San Antonio, listening on CDs. It was like 8 hours long of your book with that great radio host you had read it. And I remember learning about derivatives, learning how they were going to implode it to bring in a world government, how it was going to work, how they would set up the SDRs. And that was 12 years ago. I remember driving to San Antonio to interview the police chief and driving back listening to it and learning so much. So I like to give credit where credit's due. You're not just saying this. You understood this. You were one of the first people to specifically lay it out. Now you're laying it out again. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Alex. I appreciate that. Anyway, information is power. There's no question about it. And at the same time, my job is to distill I have people I'm talking to from all over the country, all over the world, who are really, really smart people. And I'm taking this, and I try and distill it and make it as simple as possible so that people can understand it. And the reality is that we are facing the largest economic tsunami in the history of modern history. And all you have to do is look at 7 basic facts. Number one is that the total debt in this country, federal, state, local, corporate, and personal debt, when you put those together, not including derivatives, is about 900% greater than the gross domestic product. And the percentages are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Just that alone assures that we cannot recover from this problem. Number two is that the derivative situation, and anybody who says that they know how much there are in toxic derivatives, well, maybe they know more than I do, but I've been studying this stuff for about 12 years, and I don't know how much.
Tarpley says 1.5 quadrillion.
Yeah, and that's possible. Using the most conservative numbers, which is about $130 trillion of toxic derivatives, which is 1/10 of what Tarpley is saying, is that just alone destroys the ship, sinks the Titanic. It's all over and done with. In Japan in 1989, which is one of the most productive nations in the whole world, they had something very similar to derivatives, and they went down much, much smaller in comparison. And even though Japan is one of the hardest working, most productive nations in the world, they have had 20 years of the Japan syndrome of recession, 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 because they just keep feeding this monster instead of flushing this stuff out. Number three is the balance of trade. I come from a manufacturing family, and what made America great is that we used to make things. We used to make things and sell things. And manufacturing was what made this country strong. Just 35 years ago, manufacturing represented 43% of the economy. Today, it is about 9% of the economy. Friends, if you have a hot dog stand and you don't sell as many hot dogs as you buy in product and rent, you go broke. For the last 25 years, we have had over $300 billion per year at the minimum of a negative trade balance, and it was up to $850 billion a year. This year, it's about $500 billion, which is about 3% of our economy, year in, year out, that's going right out. Number four is that the government of this country, the state and local governments, federal governments, in 1900, total represented about 4% of the GNP. 40 years ago, it was about 14%. Now, total government spending represents about 45% of the gross domestic product. This is way past the tipping point, and
government last month became the biggest hirer.
No question. Yeah.
It's now creating more jobs in private sector.
Not even close. And by definition, government is not productive. It is there supposedly to help the people. We are so far past the tipping point as far as the size of government. You know, we used to point our fingers at Sweden and talk about socialism and all that. Folks, it's right here. The monster has come here. And it's not socialism. It's fascism, because the large multinational corporations are working together with the government, and by definition, that is not socialism. That is fascism. Unemployment in this country, you know, they say it's 10% baloney. It's closer to 16%. And we now have 39.5 million people in this country. And I just heard on Alex just a little bit ago, it's now over 40 million people. 40 million Americans are now on food stamps. That's one out of every 7.8 people. That's one out of 7.8 people. Friends, that's insane. You can't have that. 40 million people on food stamps, and there would be rioting on the streets, and they've turned over the benefit package. There's this period of time that you get food stamps, and then it's supposed to go away. They have turned this over not once or twice or 3 times, but 4 times. Obama knows that if he didn't keep turning this thing over and that the middle class of this country kept paying for it, there would be rioting in the streets.
Well, those are the new breadlines. Imagine 40 million people every day lining up at soup kitchens.
You know, I watched the movie Gladiator the other day, and the old concept of bread and circus is so very real. The government is providing bread to the very poor and creating the golf channel and the basketball.
The Romans did that. They had the dole. Yeah, they handed free bread out.
Absolutely. And when it was a republic, they used to have about 10 or 12 events in the Coliseum per year, but when it became an empire, it got up to 175 events per year in the Coliseum, giving free bread away to keep the people's consciousness away from what is going on. And folks, I'll tell you what, that thing called the boob tube, the TV, it's a much bigger Coliseum than that thing in Rome. Bread and circus is a very, very...
Thousands of channels.
Thousands of channels. And finally, the basic thing is that we have what's called the Federal Reserve Banking Act. It is not federal. There's no reserves. Our founding fathers were so astute. They knew that we had to have a decentralized, publicly owned money system to keep a free nation. Our Federal Reserve, as I've said 50 times before, is not federal. There's no reserves. It's not a banking system. It's a private cartel controlled by European financiers, and the same thing for the whole world. The World Bank, the IMF.
And boy, all those old-timers that told us they were going to bankrupt the country by design and turn us over to a world government, and they all got put on lists and called names. Now it's on the news. We got to have a world government, and you're going to pay your taxes to us.
And so the economic tsunami is here. The water, as we're standing on this beach of our society, and the economy is the ocean, the economy has started pulling back further and further and further and further and further. Now, 15, 20 years ago, because we didn't have this information, because we didn't have the Alex Joneses shows to listen to, and the other shows, David Icke's, myself, and many others, it was understandable that people did not know what was going on. Now, if you've got any sort of awareness or open-mindedness, you realize that what is happening right now is the water, the economic water, drawing back and getting ready to come rushing in on us and to create the chaos. The planned chaos is the destruction of the economy of not only the United States, but of the Western world. And this is a planned event. Now, we can sit here and argue about it, and we can sit here and scratch about it, or we can look for seashells, or we can do what smart people do. We can take off in the tsunami relief routes and get up on high ground and take care of ourselves, because the whole system of this nation, the economic, political, and cultural institutions of the United States of America are full of cancer. They're dying. They cannot be fixed.
And they plan for it to collapse into a mega tyranny, a tyranny the likes of which the planet's never seen. George Humphrey, stay there. We're going to come back, finish up with your information, then open up phones in the next hour. We have a decision to make as a society, as a species, the human race. The global controllers are going to try to play us off against each other, race, religion. They're going to try to start new wars. I believe they're going to try to launch a new war against Iran in the midst of this global meltdown to get political support at home. That as people, shift into this primitive mode of rallying around, the chief. But I do see the system complaining. Obama and others are saying, Cass Sunstein's complaining, oh my God, none of them listen to us anymore. The new Supreme Court nominee is anti-free speech, anti-Second Amendment. So they're definitely trying to come in with a tyranny. But I think all this bluster and this attempt to race us to the finish line is because they understand their time is running out and the awakening is accelerating.
Yeah, Alex, I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the things that we talked about is that you and I have been doing this for a long time. And 10 years ago, I was frankly pretty frantic about what the future was for myself and my family and my country and my world. I am more positive today, even though I have 100 times more information about the bad stuff. I'm more positive today about the future of what we as individuals, as part of God's creation, can do.